Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining APDA to watch this episode of Thriving Through Occupational Therapy. We are grateful to have Monika Lukasiewicz, occupational therapist presenter today, sharing information about living well with Parkinson's and fatigue. Monika, welcome.
Thank you so much, Anushka, for having me. Love that welcome music also, or the waiting room music. Love that. It's an honor to be here with you today, and welcome to all those returning to this series by the American Parkinson's Disease Association, and a special welcome to those who are here for the very first time. As I tell you a little bit about myself, I hope it helps you be able to sit back and relax during this presentation today. And if you find yourself wanting to interact more, we will be trialing a more interactive follow-up October 16th. Stay tuned in to the American Parkinson's Disease Association for more details. My name is Monika Lukasiewicz, and I love problem solving, which makes being here as an occupational therapist an excellent option for you. I was raised in Nebraska, mostly Omaha, and have had the honor of working with families as an occupational therapist since 2009. My favorite place to serve families is in their home. After recently working in an evidence-based model of care as a program director and clinician at a community-based local nonprofit, I am most inspired to bring high-quality innovations to families in more sustainable ways, especially those living with neurological conditions, including Parkinson's. Thanks to support from a federal grant from the Administration from Community Living's Alzheimer's Disease Program Initiative, I was able to learn and deliver the program from Drexel University known as Care for the Older Person in Their Environment, or the COPE program. I have been fortunate to have gotten to learn from a number of wonderful mentors, including my own grandpa, Mary Platt, Chris Falloon, and Rachel Wiley. I have also studied the art of lifestyle redesign and motivational interviewing. And I will do my best today to bring you the most potent elements of these programs as it applies to the topic of living life to the fullest, even with fatigue. Now that you know a little more about me, let's talk about you and the topic that brought you here, fatigue. I'll introduce the topic of fatigue and follow up with specific things you can start doing today to live better with it or possibly improve some of it. As a quick side note, there were so many thoughtful questions submitted for this presentation. Thank you for that. Though we will not have time to get into them all, I will do my best to address the principle or core of what may bring you or your loved one the most quick return to the highest quality of life possible. Let's first come to understand what fatigue is within the lived experience of the Parkinson's condition. I will reference information that is available to you in the free online resource called the Parkinson's Disease Handbook, created by the American Parkinson's Disease Association. In Chapter 1 of that handbook, we learn that Parkinson's disease is a type of neurological movement disorder that affects the brain and causes difficulty with movements. For those newer to the world of Parkinson's, there are two categories of symptoms, known as motor symptoms or movement symptoms, and non-motor or non-movement symptoms. Of these two categories of symptoms, the most common in Parkinson's is the motor or movement symptoms, including tremors, stiffness in muscles, or slowness of movement. Fatigue falls under the other category of a non-motor or non-movement symptom. Non-movement related symptoms can include sleep problems, constipation, anxiety, depression, And lastly, but not least, the topic we will focus on, fatigue. Fatigue may look like the experience in this image. It is often described as a feeling of deep tiredness that is not resolved with rest, or the unpleasant sensation of lacking energy. And you may not feel like sleeping. It can also show up as mental fatigue, making it difficult to concentrate. This may mean more sitting around, laying around, declining or no longer making plans, or even getting dressed. It can look so different for each person. If you are unsure if you are experiencing fatigue or any other symptom, please talk to your healthcare provider team, including your neurologist. And if you do not have a neurologist you trust, please reach out for help to find one near you. Assuming you either you are living with fatigue or think you might be, what is there that can even be done to keep or start living more fully? Before I get to different answers to what you can do, I want to highlight an important and humbling reality. Because Parkinson's is a chronic and progressive condition, this means that the symptoms related to movement and non-movement will increase over time and can impact more of your daily life. Now, this sounds like, and is in a sense, a lot of heavy reality to digest. So let's all take a deep breath of compassion as we look at the truths of both the challenge of fatigue and possible solutions. One of my mentors has told me a line that both calms and lightens me. She says, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." The good news is that there is a whole healthcare provider team that can help you. In the Parkinson's Disease Handbook, Chapter 3 addresses the diagnosis of Parkinson's and recommends that a team approach to managing Parkinson's is what usually leads to the best long-term outcomes. And there is a member or discipline that can be part of your healthcare team who can help you find hope in new ways of looking at and doing your daily life regardless of the symptoms present. I want to give you a scenario and introduce you to the discipline of occupational therapy for consideration on your healthcare provider team. And if you don't yet know or have one near you, consider me your first one. Please direct your attention to the top left image of a couch with a dog on it. Allow me to paint you a scenario to help you understand the perspective that occupational therapists are trained to understand and how it can impact recommendations. Imagine that you are, quote unquote, perfectly healthy, whatever that means, and that you are asked for the rest of your life to sit on this couch shown here. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine living life to your fullest in this way, even though you are perfectly healthy? This perspective quickly proves the point that living life is not about merely being some version of quote unquote healthy. Living a quality life is getting to do the things that we most want or need to do with the people, in the places, and with the things that match our values, roles, and goals. Occupational therapists get this at a core level and study the interplay of dynamics, including environment and disease processes, as well as social interactions that impact how and if people engage in living life to their fullest. So occupational therapists are taught to see you not as a disease or a condition, but as a person who wants to live your own unique life experiences or occupations on a daily basis within your community. That same professional is taught how to complete an activity analysis so that no matter the symptom, condition, or injury, the occupational therapist can problem solve to help match the person to the life they want to live, while accounting honestly and fully for any common barriers, such as fatigue. So while it can be tempting to focus on the general condition of fatigue and the general diagnosis of Parkinson's, I'd like to take the creative risk of tossing out some specific ways that a person could begin interacting with the presence of fatigue in their lives, while also wanting to symbolically get off the couch. On a practical level, if you do not yet have an occupational therapist on your healthcare provider team, please ask your neurologist for a referral or search places like otpotential.com for location-specific occupational therapist near you. The question to your provider could sound something like this. I learned about occupational therapy and would like to at least be screened or evaluated by one. Can you help me get a referral? Typically, your insurance will provide coverage for this service, and often a referral or order is needed from a neurologist or primary care provider to get started. The process with occupational therapy typically begins with an assessment in which goals are identified, and a fatigue rating scale can also be used. Following this, the occupational therapist works with you towards your goals using customized interventions. And the interaction usually ends with a discharge and ideally goal achievement, and possibly the activation of new referrals to help you towards your next set of goals or interests. Before we begin talking about strategies that you could do today, I want to tell you a quick story to highlight the value of working with your entire healthcare provider team to address overlapping factors. There are a variety of factors that could impact the overall risk you have of living with fatigue. And while I love talking creative strategies, and we will, I want to acknowledge a few other areas of risk that could be unknowingly creating fatigue, or at least increasing your chances of experiencing it. These top risk factors include depression, interrupted sleep, poor diet or nutrient deficiency, side effects from other medications, and even dehydration. Due to a variety of reasons, I have challenged myself to talk more open and honestly about depression with any community I find myself. It can be quite common to imagine that we know what depression looks like. However, from my experience of working with thousands of clients and living in the world, depression can be experienced in ways that many individuals can overlook or not even realize are related to depression. One way you can help kick off the conversation with one of your healthcare providers is to ask if they can screen you or your loved one for depression. It could even sound like this. Hey, I don't think I'm depressed, but I heard a talk recently and I'd like to at least talk about it and rule it out. Can you help screen me for depression? The PHQ-9 is an example of a screen that can be used. Based on the objective information they find, they can help you explore the next best steps, and at a minimum, you will have an objective baseline for yourself or your loved one. The experience of fatigue can be complicated to improve. However, getting to the core causes will prove to be wise. So, in addition to possible depression, if you have interrupted sleep, a poor diet, are taking 5 or more medications, have recently changed medications, or are not drinking enough water, you may have symptoms of fatigue that could be impacted by addressing your sleep, by addressing a medication review, and getting more water and better nutrition. Remember, you are not alone in figuring it out. Please ask for help from your team if you're curious if these apply to you. So we just addressed the first strategy you can activate, which is asking for help from your healthcare provider team and ruling out any underlying conditions or factors that could be contributing to fatigue. Assuming you have shown up for help by being here today, let's dig into another strategy. Let's talk about what simplicity can look like and how it applies. Simplicity is the word that came to mind when I think of the intervention that includes what occupational therapists call energy conservation. For example, let's say you love cooking, but because you are more exhausted, you've stopped doing it entirely. Your occupational therapist can help identify which parts of your daily or weekly routine are impacted the most by your fatigue and then help you modify. In this case, your occupational therapist may suggest picking the meal of the day that is most important or enjoyable to make. Is it breakfast, lunch, dinner? Is it meal prep on Sundays? After deciding which meal to focus your energy on for the day, the occupational therapist can then help you break down the activity into other segments aimed at saving your energy. This is an occupation-based approach that gives you a place to start making immediate impact to match where it is impacting you living a meaningful life. Consider which activities, roles, or routines are most impacted by your fatigue. Start there. For example, in this same analogy of cooking, instead of going to the grocery store, you may begin to get groceries delivered every Saturday. Instead of buying the produce uncut and in the peel, you may begin to purchase the prepped options, such as pre-peeled and pre-cut squash, or whatever the item is you may be buying. Instead of buying the eggs in the carton and boiling them each week, maybe you buy the eggs already boiled. Instead of having to reach for supplies all around the kitchen just before you begin the meal, you may prep the supplies you need one day and put them all inside a cake pan or open container that you leave out to use the next day, making the next day's task easier to begin. Instead of using energy to get out of your pajamas in the morning, you may skip it and go straight into your cooking task with that energy. The point behind each intervention is to help you save energy for what you really want or need to do. These are examples of energy conservation. The image in this next slide makes light of what can be a heavy topic: sleep. Let's talk now about sleep habits or sleep hygiene. It is common to recognize that being well rested can make a huge impact on our energy levels. It is less common to recognize how much you can potentially control about creating or improving what is called your sleep hygiene. You may consider including your team in this discussion, as well as the option of including a sleep study to rule out bigger impacts that could be causing sleep disruption for you. Of the parts of sleep that you can control is setting yourself up to sleep. These habits or practices can help you enhance your sleep and are often called sleep hygiene. Let's explore some options for enhancing yours. Instead of going to bed at a variety of times, see if you can minimize the window of time or regularity that you go to sleep. So instead of going to bed one night at 9 p.m. and the next night at 11 p.m. and then midnight, see if you can go to bed between 9:30 and 10:30 every night. Instead of waking up at a variety of times, see if you can minimize that same window of time that you wake up. Instead of getting up at 7 a.m., then 9 a.m., then 10 a.m., see if you can wake up each day between 7:30 and 8:30. Even if you don't have a quote unquote regular job to go to for kind of kicking off a daily routine, give your life a routine. And if you need help developing this, your occupational therapist can help. Instead of drinking your last dose of caffeine at 2 p.m., see if you can cut off caffeine before noon each day, or even cut back. Instead of listening to the news before bed, see if you can turn on a musical artist, such as Beautiful Chorus, to listen to before bed. Instead of drinking water up till bedtime, see if you can meet your hydration goals at least 2 to 3 hours before you get into bed. Instead of sitting all day for the majority of your activity, get exercise and work with your healthcare provider team if you are unsure of how to start or adapt this. See if you can add at least 30 minutes, and yes, exercise can ironically help with fatigue. Instead of sleeping with the lights on, see if you can use a night mask, and they make great silk ones now, or minimize the lights so you can still have a lit path to the toilet, but not be woken up by light unless it's natural light. These are all examples of using sleep habits or sleep hygiene to help you manage fatigue. We have talked about using your healthcare provider team to rule out complicated factors that could be impacting fatigue, including occupational therapy, and have talked about common approaches an occupational therapist may use for energy conservation as well as sleep hygiene. Now let's talk about finding alternative ways to do things, especially the things related to what brings you the fullest experience of your life. In the world of OT, we call this next intervention adaptation or activity modification. You will notice in this image that the apple is cut in a bit of an uncommon way. In fact, I have rarely in my life cut an apple like this. But if cutting an apple like this saves you energy, do it. This category overlaps energy conservation and is one of my favorites. Let's explore some options. Not only is it valuable to know what activity, occupation, routine, or role is most important to you that is being impacted by the fatigue, but also to know the environment in which the activity takes place. This will help you and the occupational therapist customize the options. For example, let's say you love being able to play with the young kids and are used to doing it every day or week, but because of fatigue are opting out. A few adaptations could include seeing if there's a way to create more routine with the kids in a way that works for you. This may look like planning outings on one day of the week during the mornings, or it may mean planning ahead so that you have activities to do with the kids that match the energy level you can realistically offer. Or maybe it means choosing an environment for being with them that helps you save energy, whether that be meeting at a restaurant versus home, or in the yard versus at the park. There are ways to adapt the activities you most want to do. They may not look the same, but you can still engage in them and your occupational therapist can help. As a final example, say you love going to the farmer's market on the weekend, but have stopped because it's too exhausting. Here are a few ideas for adaptation. Consider which part of going to the market is most enjoyable. Is it seeing a few of your favorite vendors and getting to interact with them? Is it getting certain food? Maybe you contact the vendors ahead of time and ask if you can pick up the items you want or need from a central location at the market, which would save you time and energy of retrieving them. Or see if they have their products available at other places or times. Or maybe you struggle to find parking close enough so that you can have enough energy to get back to the car. See if the organizer has any suggestions for easier access or closer parking. If you enjoy talking to the vendors and most want to make time for that, consider reaching out to them in other ways via a card or even a phone call. There are often so many options for how an occupation, a role or a routine can stay alive in a person's life if they are open to new ideas. As we move into time for Q&A, let's do a quick recap. First, if you are concerned about fatigue in your life, you are not alone. You can use support from a team to address it together and explore the different complexities it can include. One of these healthcare providers on your team can be an occupational therapist. Please don't hesitate to ask for a referral. Or if you are hungry to experiment with your own adaptations today, see how you can do things differently to save energy through energy conservation. Or begin addressing your sleep by adjusting some of your sleep habits or sleep hygiene. Lastly, give yourself permission to have an open mind about how things can be done. I remember the first time I heard someone tell me they sat on the toilet with their legs over the long edge of the toilet because it was the safest way when they were at a certain restaurant. At first, I found it hard to believe. Then I realized that as long as they could go to the bathroom and do it safely, it didn't really matter how they sat on the toilet. So it is with you and the important things in your life. It has been a pleasure being with you here today. And if you find yourself wanting to interact more, we will be trialing a more interactive follow-up in October. Stay tuned to the American Parkinson's Disease Association for more details. And we will now transition to taking some questions with Anushka.
Monika, thank you so much for sharing that helpful information with us. We have had some questions that have been submitted from the audience, and the first question I want to bring to your attention is from Elizabeth. She has asked, can any OT work with a person with Parkinson's on fatigue, or do we need to see a specialist OT?
That's a great question. Any occupational therapist should be able to work with you on that topic. It's a great question.
Yeah, and Michael has asked if you can please repeat the website that you mentioned about finding an OT provider.
Yes, OT Potential. So that's OT, P is in Paul, O, T is in Tom. Now that I'm spelling E-N, T is in Tom, IAL.com. And there's a search. They specifically created a directory so you can search locally, and also you can look for OTs who do specialize in neurological conditions.
Fantastic. Thank you. The next question that we have is from G-Man Gibb, and he has asked, does a lack of desire to do things or apathy play a part in fatigue?
That's a really great question. And actually, somebody even asked another question for this particular presentation that reminds me of. So as a short answer, yes, I think it can play a part in what fatigue presents like. So it's common, I think, in many of the questions that came in even for this particular presentation, that people talk about what the fatigue can look like either in them or perhaps in the person that they are living with or that they are a care partner for. And so sometimes whether it's apathy or whether it is also a potential cognitive impairment, like these are all different things that can make fatigue kind of complicated. Because somebody asked a question also about, could a cognitive impairment impact the onset of fatigue, or it was worded somewhat similar to that. And so what I can say from my experience as an occupational therapist is each of these questions, I think, to me, point to the complexity of fatigue and the value of getting a team approach. As an occupational therapist who is also specialized in cognition, I think certain cognitive stages of decline can make a person present as if they're tired when really they may be having trouble initiating activities. So if that's, in trying to keep a long story short, if you're wondering, is my loved one fatigued? And is that why they're not getting off the couch like they used to get things going in the day? Or is it potentially a cognitive impairment and they're not able to kind of initiate doing different activities? Your healthcare provider team can also help rule that out with something as simple as a cognitive screen to really try to, again, help rule out like what's what. So just remember, you're not alone in having to figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. And this question from Lisa sort of touches on a similar theme of, ruling things out. Lisa has said her dad is 90 years old and he has a lot of fatigue. How can I tell if this is from his Parkinson's or just aging?
That's a really great question. The OT in me wants to advocate and know what he may want to do the most and wants to kind of get at the heart of, for him as a 90-year-old in his life right now, what brings him joy, and is he still engaging or willing to engage in those things? Because what I have seen too is that, again, every situation is so different, but as the environment or choices that people have in front of them to engage in life change, sometimes they may either not be able to access the things that brought them joy as easily. So as a result, it appears that they don't have as much energy. So I would be curious to ask more questions in that scenario, such as, is there something in particular that he really used to love doing that even if it's set up in front of him, he will still not do it? Or also, how much water is he getting on a daily basis? So I think even potentially sitting down with the team and doing some lab tests could probably even help rule out if there's some things that, like what's what in regards to what could be causing more of the change in energy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that multidimensional answer. And we've had another couple of questions come in, and one of them is from Katie. Katie has asked, is there any advice you have to share on how to better predict fatigue episodes? And for context, he said his loved one with Parkinson's has good energy for part of the day, but when she's out of energy, she completely hits the wall and can almost not even move. These episodes of fatigue hit unexpectedly.
Yeah, I wish that I could say there was a way to predict when folks were going to have an episode of fatigue. What I would highlight in regards to what was shared about that example is I love and would want to validate how that partner is taking notice of the unpredictability of it and also what it looks like when it is kind of playing out. What it makes me think of is having a plan B anytime you're out of the house and knowing what you're going to activate if you need to kind of activate the plan. And let's say plan B is a quick onset of a fatigue episode. And so to try to kind of risk giving some more specific examples, maybe that means that there's always, whether it be a certain snack, whether it be a place to sit, or a certain type of walker that is brought, so that there could always be an immediate rest, kind of an immediate snack. But it would make me want to ask more questions of what does that quick onset of fatigue look like? And how could we help the care partner prepare for it when it does immediately happen? Since it sounds like the part that can most be controlled is planning for an unexpected onset versus trying to predict it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned snacks, and that actually aligns with a question we got from Susan. Susan was curious about snacks that can increase energy. For example, she asked, is there more of an energy increase through caffeine or apples? What could give someone a boost in their energy during the day?
Oh, man. So I wish I could answer this better. I will speak from my experience in the lane of an occupational therapist. Depending on the person, and again, other underlying conditions, I would bring this question up to your neurologist, and you may even, especially if you're curious about the impact of nutrition on your specific loved one or your fatigue experience, I would consider bringing into your appointment a list of how and what you eat and when. Each person is so different. For example, I'm somebody who, espresso, that's going to definitely help with a fatigue if that were a situation pertaining to me. Other folks, the caffeine or the espresso is not going to be a good fit and can counteract, including medications that they may potentially be taking. So in order to help the person who really wants to know about nutrition and impact and try to get a quick, good answer, I would say at your next appointment, to be able to walk in with that list of hey, here are the things that are being eaten. Here are the times of day. Here's when we potentially are even seeing fatigue show up the most, so that your provider, including the overlap or interdisciplinary work with your OT, can also kind of try to help figure out what can be switched and what foods or hydration could be also impacting that.
Thank you for that. And is that advice pretty similar for a question we got from Jean and Tuck Maine? They've asked basically, are there vitamins or medications that can be taken for fatigue?
Yeah, I would have to definitely defer that one to the neurologist because of just how unique each person's makeup is, their past medical history, and other symptoms that may be happening at the same time. So I want to highlight the absolute value and importance of the heart of that question, of wanting to look at nutrients and kind of body chemistry, including medications. And please take that question to your team so they can really help get specific with you. I also would encourage people to consider looking at, if they haven't yet, side effects for any medications they may already be on, in order to just kind of see, is there something that potentially could be interacting that will help your provider also kind of jump ahead to problem solve with you to that particular medication.
Absolutely. And in your presentation today, you mentioned exercise and staying active. And a few people in the registration asked about advice that you have for coping with post-exercise fatigue.
Mm-hmm. So great question. And I can appreciate and validate what I guess would call the risk of finding out how much is too much. So from what I have read and seen, this is also a bit of trial and error in finding out what you and what your stage with Parkinson's can handle in regards to exercise. Probably is not a surprise. I'm going to recommend really figuring this out with your team, and especially with your neurologist. I would suggest, in order to, again, I'm a sucker for quick results if possible, especially after you meet with your team. But consider when you go into that appointment with your neurologist or OT or PT, to be able to say, for example, there's something called Bar 3. This is an online workout. They have really great adaptations in the workout, but you could say whatever workout it is that you're wanting to try, and say, hey, I'm really wanting to be able to do a Bar 3 workout for 30 minutes, 5 times a day. Is this too much, or is this, is this overkill for me to aim for? Is this a realistic goal or not? What I like about using that type of conversation for dialogue with your provider is it gives you and them an objective to kind of measure. How long is the activity that you're doing? What type of activity is it? Maybe you need more strength training versus cardio. Maybe you need a better balance of both. And please don't try to figure it out on your own, and consider bringing them here's what I did. When I look down, I'm assuming you have a piece of paper you've written it down on, so you can say here's what I tried. Maybe it says, for 2 weeks, and it says the activity you tried, how long, and then maybe you put a star of like, this is when fatigue set in, and the time of day that was. So they can map out with you immediately and really try to problem solve with you a better progression to like the next step of things. The word compassion really comes up too, to just like give yourself compassion, and please keep trying, because exercise can really be like wonderful when you find the fit that works for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that advice. And, this is a little bit of a callback to answer that you had a little while ago when you were talking about the idea of preparing in advance. And here we have a question that says, how can you prepare in advance for an event or an activity that will require extra energy or endurance?
That's a really great question. So the OT in me always goes to specific contexts. So a context to kind of think out loud with you, a context that comes to mind is maybe it's a wedding that's coming up. And so there's going to be more energy kind of at the event for the wedding. This is something that in an ideal world, I would love that you had time with at least one of your healthcare provider team members to be able to do some kind of custom problem solving with. In planning ahead, I would say consider the things that historically have worked well in regards to giving you a boost of energy. And so if that's like good sleep, have you given yourself, if you're traveling, have you brought all the things with you that you can control to have a really good night's sleep? Can you minimize? Maybe you tell family or friends like, hey, we're saving up for the event. We'll see you tomorrow. Maybe you minimize the things of leading up to the big event in order to give yourself kind of that permission to just be present. You may also give yourself permission to kind of have a stopping point of when you know you're going to like need to potentially leave early. I think the other thing, especially if it were, again, using kind of the specifics of like, let's say it were a wedding, consider how the things that you are bringing with you, so this kind of goes to environment, how those things may impact the energy that you might want to save. So for example, if you're somebody who carries something, you carry maybe a purse, whatever it is, maybe see if you can minimize whether it's your wardrobe and what it takes to manage your wardrobe, because some wardrobes are a bit higher maintenance than others for the events or the outings. And perhaps also like hydration. I have some people also who may even use like if you're somebody who kind of just needs breaks, maybe you set a timer on your phone that goes off. And maybe you also tell your loved one that like, hey, when this goes off, like, will you please help me really like leave the room and go rest? Because I think for all of us, it's easy to say that. But when you're in the midst of people you love, it can be very difficult to be like, hey, I'll be right back. I've just got to like take a quick break. So those are some ideas.
Yeah. And, this question, this sort of relates because you were talking about sort of communicating with family, communicating with loved ones. Someone has asked, how can I explain my fatigue to others?
That's a great question. The next question that comes to mind for me is, what do you need from that, or what is your motive? And when I say that, again, I'll kind of give a context. Sometimes the things from working with a lot of different people with a lot of different conditions, sometimes it can be easy to say something hoping that someone will give us a certain response or respond in a certain way because we have made something known. So I'm going to give a couple different options. One is you could lead and say, fatigue is really complicated, and it would just mean a lot if I could tell you what it feels like to me and like how it tends to present. So that's like one way of presenting it, because you just want to connect with them to be like, I want to help you understand it. The other could be because you actually would like a certain response, or like you would like to kind of have an ask from the telling them about your fatigue. So perhaps that's a different way of opening the communication. And maybe that one is more like, I've noticed more fatigue in my life. Sometimes it comes up when we're doing things together. It could mean a lot if there were just a couple adjustments made when I'm having fatigue. So I'd like to explore that a little bit with you. Would you be open to some more ideas about some things that could help me with fatigue? I like kind of prepping people of when I'm trying to kind of get their openness to possible change. I kind of like to give a lead in and then say, would you be open to that? So then there's this like exchange of kind of consent to go deeper, as well as me being prepared. If I was talking to you, Anushka, and you were like, not really, that I need to also be prepared that some people may not be open to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. And that is such helpful advice. I love that you shared those sort of scripts that people can use. And we have time for a final question. I'm going to bring forward a question from Carmen, and she has asked, will a 90-year-old person with Parkinson's still benefit from occupational therapy? And how can you sort of respectfully maybe nudge them if they're a little resistant?
That's a great question. That describes many a clients that I feel like I have had in my career. I think it's absolutely worth it to try. And what you may do is collaborate with the occupational therapist before mentioning it. Because if it's understanding why he would be getting the occupational therapy, assuming it's because of the Parkinson's, that occupational therapist could, depending on kind of how and when they're able to approach him first, can really frame and set the stage for how the occupational therapy is to benefit him and what he wants to do. I usually always try to lead with like, hey, look, I don't want to waste your time. So I just want to help you with these things that are most important to you. If they can lead and truly also match their goal setting and interventions to what he wants and what's important in his life, and sometimes that means staying out of the hospital, that's something that you might try. And I absolutely think it's worth it. Even if he declines it and says no, at least you've tried.
Absolutely. I believe that is all the questions we have time for today, but I'm so glad that we got to answer so many questions. I really appreciate you, and the audience, I'm sure, does as well, the thoughtfulness in which you responded to our questions. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. And to all of our audience members, thank you so much for watching. And please join us for our October 16th episode of Thriving Through Occupational Therapy, where we are lucky to have Monika come back and host a detailed question and answer session, delving into answering your questions about how to manage Parkinson's, fatigue, and other occupational therapy topics, such as staying safe at home, modifying your hobbies to accommodate Parkinson's, adaptations for clothes and dressing, addressing brain fog, and more occupational therapy related topics. We hope to see you there. Take care and have a great rest of your day.
Hi, I'm Leslie Chambers, the President and CEO of the American Parkinson's Disease Association. Each month across the country, APDA is providing support groups, exercise classes, and educational programs like this one to support the Parkinson's disease community. You can find all of our upcoming virtual events on our website at apdaparkinson.org/events. If you enjoyed today's broadcast, I hope you will consider making a donation to help keep programs like this possible. Your gift can help APDA support people living with PD through local programs, reliable resources, and groundbreaking research designed to find treatments and ultimately the cure for Parkinson's disease. Please donate today at apdaparkinson.org/donate. And thank you so much for your support.